Welcome to the Weekends Overrated. It's your host, Don Dollar. Thank all those who are tuning in, checking out our videos. We're still new. I believe this is episode 4 or 5. I don't have the list in front of me right now, but that's okay. So, today on the Weekends Overrated, I want to kind of touch on pivoting as it pertains to career slash business, and then how that pretty much translate when we're talking about like wealth accumulation, from a generational standpoint. So instead of being born and going through like a bunch of numbers and charts and statistics and all of that, I like to do like film study. Some things that I see in movies that I enjoy watching, I kind of, if they, if I find them relatable, I find a way to, you know, I guess do like a comparison on like different things the characters in the movie were able to do, and then draw parallels to where that resonates with me. So one of my favorite movies of all time is The Godfather Part 3. Everybody loves 1 and 2. They were classics, but for me, The Godfather 3 was the best in my opinion for a lot of reasons that stem outside of just being entertained. So, as it pertains to pivoting, when you kind of look at what the Corleones was able to do, from a business standpoint, they never really was into the career field, or the workforce. So transitioning from, I believe they started in the olive oil business, and I think the name of the company was Genco, GNCO. They started there. That's where they pretty much established themselves, as far as business wise. And then as things started to progress, they pivoted into gambling, and having a lot of connections politically, which it gave them the ability to operate in the fashion in which they was operating and doing the things that they were doing. But if you pay attention throughout the movies, you see the transition from 1 to 2 to 3, because in the third movie, oh, matter of fact, in the second Godfather, they had pretty much transitioned from a lot of the gambling and number running activities to casinos, hotels. That's where they had transitioned to Vegas, and being out in Nevada. And from there, because this pretty much takes up a large chunk of the Godfather 2. When you look at the third installation of Godfather, you start to see them take their business ventures on an international scale, invest in, I think they had made like I think it was like $500-600 million investment to have the controlling authority of a company called Immobiliare, which was like an international real estate company. So that, on top of different charities or foundations, whether they were legit or not, you just kind of start to see the pivoting. You know what I mean? And each pivot was like it was upward. It was no lateral movement. Everything was upward, and just kind of like paying attention to a lot of the small nuances in the movie, it could make you, how can I put it? I guess inspired in a way, because when you think about The Godfather, right, you think about catchy quotes, sharp suits, dark rooms, mob hits, things of that nature. But when I go back and I see things like when I think when they moved from New York to Nevada, they had the Corleone estate for sale, and I think it was like 56 acres. I was like, damn, they was operating on a 56-acre estate. And just think about the type of money that you got to be dealing with to operate on a 56-acre estate in New York. So yeah, those kind of things, just from a, I guess from a student perspective, because when I watch things, movie wise, the first time I watch it for, entertainment value, but after that, I'm more so studying and kind of seeing how does this translate to society, or how does this translate to anything that I can relate to. So I think for me, pivoting, let's say start with career wise. I started with enterprise, doing a car rental back in like I think 2016, and then I transitioned within enterprise to management and then car sales, and then I did another semi-lateral movement to Centos, but then once the pandemic came, that's when I started to transition and pivot to started my own business. I started Don Preem in October of 2019. And then I had started, working in banking, insurance. I sold life insurance, annuities, the whole nine. And throughout, each time I was able to, enter in the space, acquire the information, acquire the knowledge, and then see how I can take it and then pivot on to something else that, can just continue my arc on where I wanted to go. And when I look at The Godfather part three, because that's the culmination of it, I just kind of see where, things started and how they transitioned and, compounded that, the money, the information, the, reputation, etc. How they were able to take all of those things and just continue to pivot to put themselves in a better situation. And I think from a wealth standpoint, when you go from just doing olive oil business, from Sicily to New York to being able to write a $600 million check in order to get like controlling interest of a global real estate company, like those type of moves, how could they say scared money doesn't make money and it take money to make money. So just think about all of the different, moves you would have to make to amass that type of, that those type of ability that type of ability to make that type of move from a business standpoint. So I think for myself, you know when I look at what we were able to build with Don Preem so far, even transitioning, like I said, with the consulting, real estate, trucking, and there are a lot of other avenues in which we're going to be venturing into, and everything is in what you call, you could say, moderation. So I think the biggest thing is getting the information, because you can have money and without understanding the information, you can lose the money. You can have understanding and information, but if you don't have money, then you just got information and understanding. So being able to pair the two, I think, is really important, and that's just kind of where I find myself now when it comes to wanting to pivot business wise. So um, you know, as it pertains to The Godfather 3, like I said, that is my favorite installation of the series, just because it really allows you to go back and just to see, the different moves that were able to be made in order for the family to, ascend to, that level. And it's no different, in everyday life. If you, started a job and you started at an entry level, and you want to transition into management, or you want to transition to working corporate and different things like that, all of the information, all of the understanding and reputation that you have to accumulate and curate during that time, that's what's going to get you to those levels. So I think just understanding when it's time to pivot, and understanding the way in which you should pivot. Sometimes people just, they don't really have a plan in place. They just kind of, say F it and just do it. And I'm not really big on that. I think everything should be calculated. I feel like calculation just gives you a higher rate of success, in the long run. So, that's, pretty much what was on my mind. Like I said, as it pertains to pivoting, again, I do like to watch movies beyond just the entertainment value because I feel like they all have some type of economic or real life microcosm that you can pull from it. So, yeah, that's all we got for today. Once again, weekend's overrated. And again, thanks to all that are checking out our videos. And we're going to keep dropping. And, we just going to keep doing our thing. And we look forward to seeing you guys again. Peace.